Well, good morning. There's an amazing story of a company that has created thousands of jobs in Dickinson County. Today we have someone who can tell us that story. It starts right now.
From TV6, this is the Ryan Report. Now here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, David Brewery was born in Norway, Michigan, graduated from Kingsford High School and Michigan Tech University. He went on to an outstanding business career that continues today. He's not only created thousands of jobs in Dickinson County, but has also provided leadership on national industry boards and committees, has been a strong supporter of Michigan Tech, including serving as chairman of the Board of Control, and has lent his support to many other local and regional organizations. Just to give you an idea of the magnitude of the business development that he has helped to create in Dickinson County, the companies he's been involved with currently employ more than 3,000 people, with annual sales approaching $1 billion. Dave, welcome to the Ryan Report.
Well, thank you, Don. It's a pleasure to be here.
Those numbers are just staggering. Let's go back, though. I think, first of all, let's talk about how this all started, because your dad was really the guy who got it underway. What was the early history?
The early history was his desire to be on his own, very entrepreneurial guy, and decided that working for somebody else wasn't his thing, and actually purchased a company with another gentleman in Iron Mountain called MJ Electric, and from there decided to prosper.
Okay. And the business he purchased was really just kind of an appliance business, wasn't it?
It was a small appliance shop and a small electrical contractor, mostly residential.
Okay.
And he built it up, obviously, from pretty much zero to a substantial organization by the time that I purchased it.
He must have had big dreams even in those early years, because, you know, to go where he went was really amazing.
He did have dreams. He did have great aspirations, but in the context of how the business developed over time, he did say to me not too long ago that he never dreamed it would be as large and as successful as it has become.
And basically we're talking about where their growth occurred was in installing electrical systems?
Yes, primarily industrial and electrical transmission and distribution, many large paper machines, major transmission lines throughout the country. That was MJ Electric, and then of course we branched into the Boss snowplow and systems control, which is also involved in the electrical transmission business. Well,
and even that has its roots in the beginning, right? He decided that there would be a manufacturing component to the company?
Yes, yes. In fact, that was driven by a project that they had at the Tilden mine, and they needed to put together boxes, and he decided that it would be better to pre-wire them in the garage in the back of the shop in Iron Mountain and ship them up to the site and have them installed. So that was the genesis. It was about a 4,000 square foot garage, and today it's expanded to something over 300,000 square feet.
And that's what became Systems Control, which
that's
we'll talk
correct.
more about. You know, there were some statistics just to give people an idea of what we're talking about. You know, when the company started, it had 10 employees, and by 1999, 1,500. In 1959, the payroll was 100,000, and in 1999 it was 54 million. So I mean, you know, this is quite amazing. But let's go back to you, because I think you have a fascinating story. You know, people would say, well, here's this guy, he came from a good family, good father, you know, a bright guy apparently, and probably headed for some Ivy League school, but it didn't really work out that way, did it, in the beginning?
I think I sent you too much information.
Yeah. Your high school years were a little different, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. The high school years were a little challenging, and through the program back in the days when I went to college here at Northern in Marquette, they had the right to try,
right.
And so that was the only school I could get into was Northern, and you know, it was actually a very good school, but I didn't do very well, and as a result, I made the dean's list of former students almost right away. In fact, right away. That's an interesting story. The dean was Alan Nemi, and he hauled me into his office and he said, well, you're going to be separating from the university. But But he said, you really should come back. And that was the first time that anybody ever said that I had the ability. I didn't really recognize it. And I did come back. He let me back in, and then, you know, the story advances from there, and academically very successful.
You also had some pressures then of becoming a father at a young age and supporting a family.
Yeah, very young. And, you know, those are the kinds of things that test your character.
Yeah.
Right.
What was that it? What made the light bulb turn on in your head that you had possibilities?
I think when I got back to Northern, actually it started with Dean Nemi. He told me that I'm the kind of guy that should be working on my PhD.
Really?
And I'd never heard that before. So it sat in the back of my mind as something that it took a while to percolate, but with that as encouragement from somebody that I greatly respected, it allowed me to, when the time came, to have the confidence that there was something that I could do, maybe that I didn't understand that I could do.
Okay. And
just stuck with it.
And you eventually, of course, went to Michigan Tech and
Yes.
became an electrical engineer?
That's correct, right. And that was an interesting transition. Northern prepared me very, very well. Lots of great instructors at Northern, and you know, in the fundamental sciences, math and physics and chemistry. Some excellent people, and they took a great interest in me personally, and that helped a lot.
Okay. We'll talk more about you and your companies in just a couple of minutes. Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. Our guest this morning is David Brewery. He's the president and CEO of Northern Star Industries, talking about the development of the companies in Iron Mountain. Before we get back to the companies, you finally yourself joined your dad's company in 1973, I believe?
That's correct. And after a short stint with Wisconsin Public Service down in Green Bay, following my graduation from Tech, and worked as a division engineer. And then the opportunity, I was going to go to graduate school and study nuclear engineering at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And I was talking to my dad about that, and he said, well, you know, why don't you come back and work in the family business, and I'm going to retire one of these days and would really like to have you do that. So we talked about it and decided it was the move to make, and so I returned back to the company business in 1973. And
I know you had some increasing areas of responsibility, but you really took on some big responsibility in 1980 when he turned over a division of the company to you?
Yes. There was a part of the company that he had developed briefly for the installation of the submarine cable, the nuclear submarine communication cable at Clam Lake.
Okay.
And we had some cable plows that were sitting idle, and he said, well, I'd like you to do something with those. And so I said, okay, well, we'll see if we can't start a new business, and he gave me that responsibility, and it was really the first opportunity I had to stand on my own and prove that I either could or couldn't do something that would lead to success eventually. And it didn't start off well, but it finished well.
You had to make some personnel decisions that kind of worked against you. Tell us about that, because you came in and got rid of some people and they kind of came back at you.
Yes, that was in the early 80s. And it was at Systems Control. We were deeply involved in the nuclear business, where we were manufacturing main control boards that powered or ran the nuclear power plants. And there was some personnel issues there that I dealt with by some terminations of employees, and they made several allegations to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission that we had some problems with our records. One day I came to work and there was a FBI agent sitting in my office. and fortunately he was an open-minded guy, and he came actually from Marquette, And that resulted in some very challenging times. We were accused of something that we didn't do. It took about 4 years to resolve the issue. I have to say that I was named in every national newspaper in the country. And you know, it's interesting that when those things happen, you never get a retraction. Ultimately, we were exonerated. There was no wrongdoing. And one day I got a call from the FBI, and they said, come get your records. And I came up to Marquette, got a box of records and brought them back to Iron Mountain, and that was all I ever heard from it.
And that was it.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Right.
And as I said, we can only scratch the surface here, so we'll kind of jump forward.
Sure.
In 1990, you actually took over the whole company.
Yes, actually in '85, I started running the entire business, which at the time comprised MJ Electric, the Boss Snowplow and Systems Control, and a company we had in Florida called Energy Erectors. And my dad had decided that he wanted to retire, and then subsequently wanted me to buy him out. And he's the kind of guy that doesn't give you anything. So it was, you go to the bank and borrow some money and you're going to buy me out.
Okay.
And I said, okay, I guess I'm going to do that.
Okay.
And so we consummated a deal. I purchased his shares of stock, and which was the majority of the shares in the company, and that was in the beginning of 1993, and took off from there.
Okay. And you encountered some challenges then, but probably don't have time to go into them all. But this has never been just an easy ride, has it?
No, no. You know, there's a great saying by Franklin Roosevelt that said, "A good sailor is never made by a smooth sea," and that's certainly been the case. And I suspect that it's the case with all businesses. You know, I think if you're in business long enough, you're going to have challenges, and it's what you do with those challenges and the fact that you have the tenacity to see it through. Yeah, and there were some very challenging events in my career, but if you stick with it long enough and you get good people to help you, and I've had good lawyers and good accountants and advisors, you can see your way through those things. They certainly teach you lessons, and I've learned my share, of course. But you know, when it comes down to it, the success that I think that any business has comes from the tenacity, the willingness to stick with it, and not to give up when the times are tough.
I know in reading some of your publications or your reports, tenacity is kind of a key word in all of that.
It is, and I think it's a fundamental element in success. There are many, of course, but at least in my career, the unwillingness to give up during adverse conditions has been a major factor in allowing me to continue and ultimately for the business to grow, because there's always things that are happening.
Sure.
If it isn't the economy, it's a disgruntled employee, or you know, the government sometimes has a tendency to interfere with your success, or at least it seems like they do. So yeah, you have to stick with it.
Okay. We have to take one more break. Back with more on the Ryan Report in just 2 minutes. Our guest again is David Brewery, CEO of Northern Star Industries. As usual, I'm running short of time and so much more I want to talk about. First of all, how did Boss Snowplow come to be? That seemed to be a break from the electrical industry tradition.
Yes, indeed. As I mentioned earlier, we were involved in the nuclear business, and Browns Ferry, 3 Mile Island, that pretty well ended that, you know, that area for us. Because the nuclear industry just dried up. So we were without a product, and I went searching for something else to do, to use in the facility, because we had a large facility. There was hardly anything going on there. and met a gentleman by the name of Wally Niemela up in Chassel. We struck a deal to purchase the Boss snowplow from Wally and took it to its very beginnings. That was challenging as well. We had our largest competitor decide to steal our patent, and that took about 4 years to resolve in federal court, but eventually we won that lawsuit, and it gave us a reprieve because we had a permanent injunction, and it also gave us treble damages, which I used to, yes it does, and I used to reinvest in the business and get us going in that product line. And eventually the Boss snowplow became the #1 brand. It took about 30 years, 25 years to do that, but they became the #1 brand, and then a couple of years ago I sold the snowplow operations to the Toro company.
And again, we have to do this quickly, but you really created 3 successful companies, the MJ Electric, the Systems Control, and Boss Snowplow.
That's correct.
And you did sell off MJ Electric at one point and Boss Snowplow.
That's correct.
But you still have a very successful business in Iron Mountain that employs over 500 people called Systems Control, a very modern, very nice plant and facility. That business is doing very well too, isn't it?
It is. It's doing extremely well. We have a very talented management group down there. We have extraordinary employees. We have incredible work ethic, I think, in the Upper Peninsula in general. And our customers come into our facility for the first time, and they look at it and say, this is absolutely incredible. We had no idea there was a place like this anywhere, let alone in Iron Mountain, Michigan. And we produce products for the electric utility industry that helps transmit power from generation station to the distribution points. It's a business that's been growing so rapidly, Don, that we just can't even stay ahead of it. As you mentioned, we are employing in excess of 525 people, and we're constantly looking for people. All walks, all job classifications, from the folks on the floor that wire the control panels and build the buildings that we build. We're in constant need, up to the engineering folks, purchasing folks, human resource people. It just goes on and on.
And Boss Snowplow is still in business in Iron Mountain, and MJ Electric is still headquartered in Iron Mountain. So
it is.
I imagine in some cases you're competing with those companies for some of these talented people too.
Yes, we are on occasion, and because we do employ some of the same kinds of folks, and it gets a little dicey once in a while, but we're all friends. We try to do the best that we can for our businesses and for the community.
And so you went from being not a high school dropout, but almost, to the chairman of the board of Michigan Tech at one point.
Yeah, might be careful how to say that, Don. Glenn Moraz might wonder why. Yeah, so that was very exciting to be, having graduated from Michigan Tech, and then get an opportunity to serve and give back to the university. I was appointed by Governor Engler in 2000, and it was a great opportunity. We did go through a change in presidency then, and that was exciting and fun and very much a learning experience. And I look back now and I see what the team up there has done, and that's been an extraordinary story as well. Tech is one of the highest ranked engineering universities in the country, and in some cases in the world. So I'm very proud of the fact that I was able to be a part of that.
We're out of time, but congratulations really on an outstanding career, but really, creating all those jobs in Iron Mountain and Dickinson County has been a major accomplishment.
Well, thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure to be here, and appreciate the invitation to tell our story.
Okay, back with more on the Ryan Report after this break. Well, the other day as I was searching through my neckties looking for one in particular that was avoiding me, I started thinking about how this all came to be. How did someone decide that in certain dress-up situations, men would wear a piece of colorful cloth wrapped around their neck? Well, it turns out we probably have the French to thank or blame for that. Specifically, King Louis XIV first popularized the tie's predecessor, the cravat. Apparently, there's been no stopping it since then. Some think it's a waste of time and money and a nuisance to have to wear one. But GQ magazine says a tie is the first thing people notice. Nice tie. That's always what people say. Their eyes can't help but go there first. Well, you can decide for yourself where you stand in that debate. Back to my dilemma. The other day, my ties are kind of a mess. I have a bunch grouped on one hanger that includes those I wear and quite a few that I haven't worn in a long time. That sometimes slows me down when I'm looking for the one I want. I have a second hanger that includes ties I never wear anymore. I can't throw them away because they just might come back in style. If you've watched before, you know that I have trouble throwing things away. And speaking of coming back in style, I've been through a lot of necktie style changes in my lifetime. Mostly it has to do with the width of the tie. I think it's all a plot by the companies that sell ties. You know, once you have a nice collection of wider ties, they decide that narrow ones are in fashion. And of course, once you get several years into the narrow style, they start making them a little wider. It really is a conspiracy, which kind of gets me back to the point that got me started on this subject to begin with. My answer to the changing width dilemma is just to save them all and wait for some to come back in fashion. I think I have 60 or 70 neckties. I just wish they were like baseball cards or coins, collectibles that increase in value as they get older. And as I was looking around the newsroom the other day, I thought about the fact that we have some great young reporters, anchors, and meteorologists, but I have neckties older than they are. I'm not sure what that means. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Almost time to wrap it up for another week. The Today Show is just about set to roll. Remember, if you miss our show, want to recommend it to a friend, or want to watch it again, you can find it on the internet at uppermichigansource.com. Thanks to Dave Brewery for joining us this morning. As I said at the top of the show, what he and his family have accomplished in Dickinson County is pretty amazing. And finally, thank you for being with us today. Hope we can look forward to seeing you again next Sunday morning.